Oddworld, Strangler's Wrath. Well, Stranger's Wrath is a game where you can beat the crap out of anthropomorphic outlaws while saving deadly and cute critters for later in your bag of horrors. In a lawless land filled with odd reptile peoples, who will guide them to the light? All jokes aside, Oddworld is a rich and diverse universe that I frankly never encountered until this game. The original Oddworld was published back in 1997 by GT Interactive, a subsidiary of Atari. The creators pumped out a few sequels of finely tuned steampunk dystopian Kermit the Frog puzzle platformers, and a cult following established itself. But then, 2005 happened. Half-Life 2 came out. GTA San Andreas, Resident Evil 4, Shadow of the Colossus, God of War, Psychonauts, for God's sake, Splinter Cell Chaos Theory came out. And that game was the only thing that got me out of Halo 2 multiplayer lobbies. The glory of that old school Xbox Live chat rooms. Point is, the dawn of the golden age was upon us, and a 3D Oddworld reboot was not in most people's line of sight. And quite frankly, was dwarfed by the shadow of giants in their infancy. Gamers were getting spoiled rotten. As aforementioned, Stranger's Wrath launched to the public as the first of the series to go full 3D, but with a mixed reception and a western twang. Regardless, fans felt disconnected to the original series concept, sort of like Prince of Persia's Rocky Life. It's also one of those games that flew under the radar for my mom. Being the holy type, I'm unsure she would have approved of it. There's a few ways to play this game, but for this video I'll be running the Steam version, which, has some faults. First of all, the controls are absolutely miffed, to the point where you might find yourself punching uncontrollably anytime you enter into first person. But that's if you actually get into the game menu, because this is one of those older gens that will launch into an untouchable resolution, leaving you to play the guessing game whether or not your mouse is even over the exit button. Even more egregiously, this game requires you to change your keybinds in a config file. And with the HD version of this game, the higher frame rates can cause some issues, but more on that later. Thankfully, after some help with Steam guides, I got this limping turd of a third wheel to finally boot correctly, and even with bearable controls. And yes, an Xbox controller with the correct keybinds will feel just fine. Once you hit the menu screen, you'll be greeted by our protagonist of this universe, the furry cowboy version of Sylvester Stallone. In the beginning cinematic, we see Strangler preparing for his hunt, gathering some of this game's ammunition, Bolamites and Fuzzles respectively. But don't worry, there's more to come. He sets up a trap for later before dashing away. And panning up through the cemetery, we get a closer look at the state of Western Modus, where it seems the water has run dry for the land. But you also get to see some familiar types of characters you'd see in Oddworld. Some fleshy green reptile dudes. But that's a side note, because Stranger is being pursued by a nasty looking buck-toothed face only a mama can love Scaly. Clearly our character has the upper hand here, dexterity and intelligence, dodging rounds to eventually lead this outlaw into the pitfall trap he placed earlier. After capturing your bounty, it's established that your character in a western hates guns.
You jerk! You broke our favorite rifle! Never liked guns. Oh man, why'd you have to do that?
I mean, this is a common trope in the early 2000s, and the game makes up for it in other forms of violence, like the furry kind. We get thrown into the game's tutorial, where it's shown how to deal with the local convention attendees. You start out the game with a spin attack, a crossbow, and a headbutt for close encounters. This is where you'll see either red or yellow stars on your bounty. This is a 3 strikes you're out kind of system, where the red ones are strikes towards death, and the yellows are for full knockouts. Once your bounty is either dead or knocked out, you can then vacuum him up into your bag of horrors. Bagging and tagging's my name. But Gold Golden is to blame. Before that, you get introduced to the sound of Stranger's furry jumping ass. You're gonna hear a lot of this, so you better get used to it. Another cool mechanic about Stranger's Wrath is he uses a regeneration system for health, where you get to shake up all the crap that's been slung your way, like Johnny Depp in an animated courtroom.
Now shoot, you don't get any, you creep!
And be careful not to get caught, because enemies in this game do not f*** around. You really get a sense that our character is as tough as a bear and agile as a tiger, but that won't stop a few drunk enemies at their throwing axes to knock your lights out. As we progress through Tutorial Lane, we get formally introduced to some critters that you can use on your modified crossbow. These little guys come in 7 types: stunks, thud slugs, boom bats, sting bees, bolamites, chippunks, and fuzzles. Zapflies act as the plasma pistol of this game, with fast light and smoke charge attacks. This can also stun the bejesus out of most common enemies, as well as operate some of this game's mechanical devices. Critters aren't hard to find. They can all be found scurrying around the map, with some of the more overpowered ones in harder to find places. Besides Monster Hunter World, I'm not sure I've really seen a game do this with live ammunition before. Even more uniquely, in Stranger's Wrath you can equip 2 types of ammo to your crossbow, allowing for curious combinations, like drawing enemies close with shit-talking chippunks and fuzzles to cause dot damage. Or completely immobilize your enemy using stunks to knock out inducing farts with the electric shock from a fully charged sapfly. The game really lets you play around, most of the time. After getting into town, the first thing I do was lock this pig up. But just as I thought my day was done, I forgot something. It was important I break down this guy's character, with one passive-aggressive comment at a time.
Well, I guess it sucks being you right now, huh?
Laugh it up! When my brothers get here, they're gonna burn this town to the ground. You with it, boy?
So how's it going, jailbait?
You're real funny, Fuzzface. I'll be laughing real hard with my brother knocking your teeth out.
We get introduced to the master race of Western Modus, the colonials of this land and pinnacle of evolution, Cock.
Pardon? You tell me where the bounty store is?
Yeah, might want to look for the big sign that says Bounty Store.
I'm not really sure where the role fits into the greater universe, but a comedic relief is one of them every time I see him cross a road. At least their towns are handy stops to upgrade your gear, as well as bounty stores to pawn off your bloody and bruised bounties, all squeezed together, dead or alive, in my backpack.
Well, Doc's up in his Mongo office, but he'll be back here soon. In the meantime, I'll cash out them outlaws you captured, and I got a few more for you.
But like a good little denizen of Modus, the impulse to buy shit when I can't afford it takes over. Daddy's getting a new pair of shoes. The upgrade system is fairly clean for a game released in this era. The usual offenders appear, with standard armor, health points, ammo capacity, and stamina buffs. But more interestingly, each ammo type can be upgraded to be far more powerful and useful than their base counterparts. After buying more rope than Jeffrey Dahmer in Ace Hardware store, I had a plan. If only there was some crystal ball laying around in my Western.
Stop that, you stinky turd! Don't get us all ruffled up! Now that was totally uncalled for! Let's hope he settles down.
The graphics in this game are not half bad for its age. But let me re-clarify that for this video I'm using the HD version, which was released back in September of 2010, 5 years after its initial debut. That being said, the original devs and publishers were behind this remaster, and faithfully upgraded the visual fidelity, adding in shaders and pumping up the resolution for starters. While the game is mostly linear, without much deviation besides what order you take your bounties, there's some variety in the game's levels, from snow-covered riverheads and the searing wastelands, to ancient temples and junkyards. Stranger's Wrath touches a lot of bases over the game's length, and what seems like random design was thoughtfully placed, so the player doesn't feel bored, and I really appreciate that. The critters themselves are a huge part of the game as well. Being your only source of ammo, the attention to detail on these guys really shows, especially after seeing their ultimate form. As much as I bash on this game, it's obvious the people behind it really cared about the art design and the universe the player inhabits. As a nice touch, after beating the game, you get access to an art gallery. Here you get to see some of their early incarnations for various characters, zones, and rough storyboard drawings, with even a deleted scene in its infancy, depicting the destruction Sekto brought onto the grub peoples. It's really cool to see an artist's vision come to life. And the other two storyboards were implemented into the final version of the game with very few adjustments. Oddworld Interactive fostered a work environment that seemed to attract some truly talented people to the team. A few quick words about the game's soundtrack. It's pretty great, actually. In fact, all of the Oddworld games were composed by Micheal, who even voiced several characters in each of them himself. Like I said, these people are invested, and it shows. The mystical feel is prevalent, with Native American-like hymns as some of my favorites, while others have an overtly Western and industrial tone, invoking both imagery and emotion while emphasizing the player's actions. It's a shame that apparently some of the OST was cut from the HD version, because they have a few bangers here. It's quality design that gets me hard in a video game, and there's a lot on offer here. This game is not story heavy, but where it does shine is in the cutscenes. Information gets dripped in at a slow but palatable rate, like a lot lizard visiting her drug dealer. We find out that Stranger is in need of some kind of operation, and the local cock doc isn't in office today. In the meantime, our goal is simple. We need more moolah for operation. The answers behind Stranger's past are not touched on at all here, or anywhere for that matter. Well, that's because you're just a vehicle for the main story beats of the game. I really enjoy this type of storytelling, where you're not the almighty god of everything. Sure, it's important you gather up bounties and fundraise enough money for your mysterious operation, but it's a fairly short romp through such a well-realized world. We gallivant through the wasteland, with not one nose left unbloodied, gathering the two outlaws that have been plaguing Guzzards Gulch. The now dead Filthy Hands Floyd and Luton Duke weren't going to cause any more issues for the local trailer park and water treatment plants. Even though there may be a few chests missing, it's about time we get paid. After seeing the cock doc, it doesn't really get you anywhere though, because it's a hefty $20,000 for a nip and tuck. Once you're done putting your bloody bounties in cold storage, the step-bro of Blister's Booty decides it's a great time to storm Guzzards Gulch. But no two-timing whore of a mini-boss was going to take me down. Despite destroying the town, I had no guilt for these creepy little clackers, and it was time to spread my terror elsewhere. Cruising through the canyon, we enter our next town, Buzzerton. This little settlement is nestled next to the sewers, where people have grown far too accustomed to the smell of their own shit. Visiting the bounty store to turn in Boyle's booty, we discuss with the owner where to head off next, but for a change of pace, it's actually a rescue mission. Eugene Luce, a local clacker, was kidnapped and stashed near a grub temple. Stranger stumbles into this holy place to show Eugene's irreverent captors who's boss. But just as we're about to leave, this little clucker decides to give me the Greek treatment.
Wouldn't want to, fall.
The grub peoples are primitive and simple-hearted, and are terrified at the sight of anyone other than their own members. The tribe is being pursued and tormented by a demon, Sekto, mostly at the hand of his little creepy minions, the Walvarks. Sekto is responsible for driving out the grubs from their homelands and damming up the river. It's revealed that on top of it, this little squid is responsible for the extinction of the Steefs as well, a mysterious species of centaur-like beings that were said to be the protectors of the so-called grubs. Without their guardians, the grub people are shoved to the side, and a great dam is constructed to control Western Modus's flow of fresh water. It's a simple yet sinister plot, where Sekto can control everything quite easily, with minimal effort. I'm sure there's not any real-life parallels here. The next bounty we take up is the one on Meekly McGraw, an apple addict who's been causing trouble at the local apple farm. Little does he know, I already cleaned that place dry of all its ill-gotten riches. He really didn't care though, because this dude has a Napoleon complex, and becomes a giant pain in the ass after hopping into his discount mech suit. Regardless, he was easily taken down after I threw a few AA coins at him.
That's how you slam the boys.
I don't think he's gonna make it though. After taking McGraw's southpaw, Stranger takes on the price of Joe Mama. For this ugly little tramp, we'll have to take the sewers in order to get to the shipwreck outside of town, swimming through the worst kind of waste that society has to offer. Once we're done wading through chest-high dog water, we exit that hellhole and collect some sting bees for later. Joe Mama is possibly allergic, so this should be fun, seeing her blow up like a balloon. Once we get to her though, it's shown she's a master debater, controlling a giant magnet that can one-shot Stranger, as well as her sons. She's the only female outlaw in the game, and seems to have way too many sons. What I'm saying is this bitch gets around. The hardest part is getting across this tightrope without getting shot down. Go ahead and stun her before crossing, and Joe Mama is easily taken out after getting close. Last but not least, the bounty, Pack Rat Palooka, is holed up in his junkyard hideout and has stolen Eugene's laptop. Little is known about him, but his presence is offensive enough. It's our mission to save Eugene's computer before Palooka can delete all of his porn.
Hey, boss! We got the Clacker's computer all hooked up to the generators. All right!
But first, Stranger goes down into the sewers and gets the password for the junkyard from an outlaw called Scuzz, who has a grudge against Palooka after the latter double-crossed him.
Well, to get that two-timing punk, you're gonna need a password. The password is...
Whoa.
The junkyard doorman asks for the password, and we recite it flawlessly.
I got a password to see Pack Rat. It's pack your
Man, this game is rated T for teens? Fighting our way through Palooka, we approach his subreddit headquarters, where he has used the laptop to create a shield around himself. We take him out quite easily though, because after blowing up his generator, we get to face him on an even playing field. After getting back into Buzzerton, unfortunately we learn we can't extort anyone else, forcing us to move on to the next slumlord. Before we leave though, Stranger has a call with Mr. Sekto in Oktigi, who tells him if he finds a Steve, he will give him the 20 grand he needs. However, he's not the only one being put on the hunt. Heading out of town, we enter a cool-looking cave with these green rocks, and on exiting, get immediately assaulted by Halo 2 Jackal snipers. Stranger arrives in the settlement of Yolk City, on the banks of the Mongo River, but of course, learns that the dock's office is further up north, and we would need to hire a barge to reach him. And moreover, the barges aren't exactly running these days, due to rabid furries causing trouble. Up next, we take up the bounty on Explosives McGee, who's been hanging out with Goldtooth, illegally mining for artifacts in the local mine. On the way there, Stranger gets to enjoy a few new rides at Six Flags Mundus, and hauls in McGee's ass like a bag of soggy coal, but only after a tediously long battle that ultimately ends with McGee face first on the ground. The issue here is that there isn't a lot of coverage for your character, so if you get caught out in the open, that can be it for Stranger. After getting paid, it's time to go after Lefty Lugnuts, who's been poaching slegs in the river valley illegally. Before that, we get told by a local that there's a black market in town, and to visit if we need anything a bounty hunter might need. To bag Lugnuts, Stranger is gonna need to learn a sleg call from a hunter.
That's a huge slag.
What the living fuck is that? I didn't expect to face an eldritch horror though, goddamn. With that abomination taken care of, we get taught the sleg call from this random clacker.
Excuse me.
And draw old Lefty out of his hollow with it. We quickly dispatch this idiot though, and for the first time I actually get an alive bounty. I'm glad that's over, because the cyborg elbows freely and his gang have been plotting to send a load of explosives down the river to Yolk City's port. Since old Explosives McGee was dead, this guy had to be dealt with before he grew a pair and went through with his plan.
And where's my back armor?
When you go to face him, you'll notice a few air shafts and platforms above you. jump on these platforms and watch as he blow through his poorly designed defenses. We vacuum up what is probably the weight of a Toyota Corolla and jump gracefully down an exit chute. Hauling in elbows for an oil change, Stranger staggers over to the counter and takes on the next bounty for Fatty McBoom Boom.
If you're going after Fatty McBoom Boom, you're gonna have to talk to Sky Cart Joe. He runs a sky cart that can take you up to McBoom Boom's lair.
After learning that Skycard Joe has been working with Fatty, Stranger's infuriated.
Piss off, poor boy. I got better things to do than talk to strangers.
We take out our anger with direct violence.
Now if that sky card ain't running when I get back here, I might have to tell you another joke.
Oh, I'm going!
This convinces Joe to help us get up to McBoom Boom's hideout fairly easily. But what can you expect from a clucker like him? The fight with Fatty can be difficult.
I want you boys to shoot the head off anybody that moseys on in here.
But that's only if you get hit by his WWE wrestling moves. Another one bites the dust, and I smell an operation in my future.
Boom, boom, I say.
After learning that the BART is operating again, it's time that we head up to Dusty Hollow, where the doc has his Mongo River Valley office. When we finally reach Doc's office, it's revealed that he's been hung out like a dead cat.
Damn, they strung up Doc. How am I gonna get the surgery now?
I was gonna do that. However, before we could loot his corpse, that outlaw that was tipped off by Sekto earlier, D. Castle Raider, ambushes us. I tried to fight him off but was quickly knocked out.
Alright, hold it, boys. Hold it.
When Stranger wakes up, he finds himself tied up in Raider's hideout, with his gear and weapons stolen. After the outlaws have a short interrogation on the whereabouts of the Steve, some papers detailing Stranger's surgery falls out of his poncho. As he struggles to get free, Raider looks at the papers and is shocked at what he sees, a massive cock,
Get them pants off.
and orders Stranger's pants to be cut off. That was a trick though, because it's revealed that Stranger is actually a furry Steve boy himself. Out of sheer disappointment, the outlaw orders his men to kill Stranger. Before that could happen, a hail of arrows fly into the hideout, killing one in a sick slow-mo scene and freeing us all, at the same time taking our gear. I decided there was only one solution for their transgressions, and the solution was simple. Cleanse them with fire, Sigma. We narrowly escaped though, and unfortunately, upon entering New York City, we're greeted by cries of fear and a hail of slow-moving bullets. The greedy idiots want a bounty placed on our head, and after scampering off into the outskirts of town, Stranger vows to get his revenge on Sekto. In the morning, we find ourselves in a native grub village, where we learn the reason they saved us and our gear.
That's right, it was us, dude, because we need your help to fight that Sekto demon.
The grubs have been watching you fight against the local furries, and plead for you to join the scaly side, and finally take out Sekto for good. Before setting off, the grubs pimp us out and give up a set of steep armor, an upgraded crossbow with new ammo, and directions to find a boat that can take us to Sekto's dam. Alright, so first things first. Stranger must break through Sekto's water bottling facility. However, these jackasses can hit really hard, but with our new charge attack, speed, and armor, they're taken out with ease. How could anybody stand up to such a god? Toppling the bottle plant was just a stop on our way though, and we enter the grub cave, where the boat was hidden. Once there, the grubs offer to repair it for us, but as we're about to get that done, another grub runs up out of breath and pleads we save their village from earlier. It's being attacked by Sekto's Walvark shock troopers, and we're the only one that can defend them. After mopping up the Covenant and returning back to the cave, the grubs have successfully repaired the rundown boat. They tell us that if we're gonna head up to Sekto's dam, I'm gonna have to head upstream through their city, which just so happens to be under Walvark threat as well. Stop manipulating me, man. The Walvark have been taking native lands for a while now, and the only grub stronghold left was soon to be sieged. Setting out onto the river in this game's version of a warthog, we get treated to a scene of impending devastation. in a cool homage to the Normandy beach invasions of World War II. The Wolvark are invading Last Legs, blocking our path upriver. The Grubs tell us that their leader can help us find a way to Sekto, but she's currently defending Last Legs from the invasion. Stranger rows up the beach and takes the fight head on, Saving Private Ryan style, single-handedly repelling the Wolvark scum and rescuing their incompetent leader. The Grubs take control of their city's catapults. Bringing down the dam will be their job, but mine is simple. Time to make some Sekto calamari. Returning to the boat, Stranger sets out on the river one last time. Approaching the gates of Sekto's dam, we get a scale of just how huge it is. It's hard to imagine New Yolk City wouldn't be submerged in water if this wasn't already here. Enabling the locks, we progress through a few boat lifts into the belly of the beast, where Stranger gets introduced to this game's awful creature of Sekto's design.
Oh, what the hell is that?
Gloktigi. These Frankensteins are artificial life forms, a forced hybridization between the Glocken and Sekto's species, the Oktiki. The Glocken are the main industrial race of the Oddworld universe. However, we don't see them in this game, and yet their technology is everywhere. Besides being able to shoot loads of green spunk everywhere, I didn't catch anything besides a bad case of paralysis. After laying it out like a fish out of water, the main assault begins, with volley after volley of catapults firing on the dam, all around us. The Grub commanding them does not shut the fuck up though, and on each volley screams, blowing through Stranger's enemies. The further we head inside, the more obvious the chaos and destruction we have caused becomes, eventually leading to a timed escape scene, ripped straight out of the ending of Halo. And as we're just about to get through the door, we just barely miss it. What the fuck? I had plenty of time left, didn't I? And after a few more attempts, I was just about to put down this game for good. Of course, the spot I'd get hard locked in was just before the end. But with the tip from Steam guides about frame rate and graphical bugs, I had an idea. Let's change the max frame rate and see if it's causing anything else. 100 FPS, 60 FPS, 30 FPS. This was getting progressively worse, and I'm not sure why. Finally, at a max 300 FPS, I was able to just barely get through the door, slicing off the end of my ass cheeks. What the fuck, Oddworld? Come on, Sekto. It's time to meet your maker. He isn't gonna make it easy though, and summons 2 twin Gluck-Glucks to deal with me. Sekto hops into his Office Space mech suit and creates a force field around himself. You can just hang out behind these fallen concrete sections though, and easily chip away at the generator's health, powering the giant machine. The thing starts to catastrophically fail, sending the death nail into the damn structure, leading him to be crushed by debris as his own hubris is falling around him. Stranger drags the oily body of Sekto onto the shore and notices a pair of hooves like his. After flipping over the corpse, we're horrified by what we saw, revealing that Sekto was actually the olden Steve. The weakened Steve asks if the water is free before he dies peacefully. He seems to have been a pawn in Sekto's plan the entire time, and no wonder the Grubs couldn't find him after his mysterious disappearance. The real Sekto swims down the Mongo River though, with his future plans left as an unknown. Well, hot damn, this was a game for sure. All jokes aside, I had a lot of fun revisiting this game from my childhood. But holy hell, was it not appropriate for my age of 13? Oftentimes it's difficult getting into older games with how spoiled we are for choice these days, but you know, if you have to try it, I would give it a go. I honestly love this game. It's simple and charming with its irreverent comedy and an equally as impressive world design. I'm not sure if I mentioned this, but the objective of getting moolah is not really important. I mean, you can spend your cash whenever you have it at any time on whatever you want, because it's all made meaningless after the last upgrades are provided by the Grub people. Besides a pretty hilarious visual bug, the game is kinda unplayable for users who might not be tech savvy. As much as I'd like to recommend this game, it's a giant pain in my ass to run, or even complete for that matter. And while I didn't have any crashes through my playthrough, dev support has dried up completely, and I'd recommend playing the older version if you want to avoid soft locks. Whew. If you made it this far, I commend you. And I hope you enjoyed our little romp through Western Modas. If you like this kind of video, let me know, so I can work on another. Or voice your disgust in the comments. Engagement is engagement, after all. Bye now.